Vienna, December 21st, 1975. The Organization of Oil Exporting Countries, OPEC, is meeting to once again raise the price of oil. Recreated here is one of history's boldest terrorist operations. Ilich Ramirez Sanchez, alias Carlos, with his gang, quietly enter OPEC headquarters. Their plan? Hold the powerful oil ministers hostage and kill the two most important members, the oil minister of Iran and of Saudi Arabia. Who is Carlos? How did he dare dictate terms to OPEC and become the most wanted man in the world? Four days before Christmas, 1975, Vienna was quiet. It is Sunday.
Guten Morgen, OPEC. Ja?
Even so, members of OPEC are in conference at their headquarters.
Hallo?
A receptionist is on duty outside the conference room.
Ja, bitte.
Security? Only two aging Austrian policemen. After all, who would attack OPEC? Less than a mile away, a squad of Einsatzkommando, Austrian anti-terrorist police, is on duty. This unit has been in existence since the Munich Olympic murders of 1973. Christmas carols take the place of crime reports on the radio. The only conflict, Black Knight takes Queen's Rook. Carlos' attack on OPEC headquarters is recreated.
Hey, where's the conference room?
Are you a policeman?
Yes?
Hallo, es wird hier geschossen. Hallo.
The receptionist tries to call police.
Geschossen. Hier ist OPEC. Hier wird geschossen. Hallo. Hallo, hier ist OPEC. Es wird geschossen.
Carlos was trained by Soviet KGB agents in Havana and Moscow. He taught his followers that intimidation is a powerful terrorist tool. One of the oil minister's bodyguards tries to disarm a female gang member. Mischance keeps making the operation bloodier. Had the OPEC official known how to work the firing mechanism of Carlos' machine gun, Carlos might now be dead. The conference room, now a prison for the hostages, is mined with plastic explosives. To further intimidate his captives, Carlos has ordered some charges be real, some be fake. But which terrified prisoner will risk his life to find out?
Down! Get down! Everybody down!
In an isolated office, a security guard finds a telephone still connected and calls police.
OPEC Überfall! Sie schießen mit Maschinenpistolen! Sie schießen mit Maschinenpistolen!
Wie? Maschinenpistolen? OPEC, ja, wir kommen, ja.
Dispatchers alert the Einsatzkommando.
Sektor 1.
Ja, wir kommen.
By day's end, 500 armed men would surround the OPEC headquarters. As the commando squad races toward OPEC, Chancellor Kreisky is summoned to Vienna from holiday to negotiate with Carlos. Carlos knows he's in a strong bargaining position. He holds 62 hostages at gunpoint in the conference room. But still, no one knows what Carlos wants. By now, the police are in the building. The terrorists open fire on the commandos. A 20-minute firefight ends in stalemate. The police pull back.
You. Not you, the blonde.
Confident now, Carlos chooses the most attractive secretary among the hostages and dictates his demands for delivery to the Chancellor of Austria. He wants a bus to transport everyone to the airport, a DC-9 jet to fly them to an unknown destination, and a pro-Palestinian statement to be read over Austrian radio every 2 hours. Negotiations now begin. An Iraqi diplomat acts as go-between for Carlos and Chancellor Kreisky.
First, you agree to release all the
The
Austrians.
go-between tells Carlos that Kreisky demands all Austrian citizens be released.
Residents.
I command here, not Kreisky, not anybody else. Me, Carlos, I give the orders. I decide who goes and who stays. Didn't you tell him who I am?
I told him, you are Carlos, the famous Carlos.
Flattered, his ego boosted, Carlos agrees to leave
right,
most of the hostages behind.
I wasn't going to take them anyway.
Throughout the operation, Carlos lost no opportunity to remind his hostages and the police that he was the same Carlos wanted throughout Europe for bombings, assassination attempts, and the cold-blooded killing of at least 6 men. Kreisky then gives in to Carlos' demands. Now, he has succeeded in bringing Austria and the mighty OPEC to their knees. At dawn the next day, Carlos leaves OPEC with 35 hostages. This is actual film of that morning. Here, Carlos plays out a bizarre scene, shaking hands and even embracing those he had terrorized hours earlier. Psychiatrist Dr. Frederick Hacker is author of the book Crusaders, Criminals, and Crazies.
Well, we see that very often, that some kind of strong emotional and affective ties develop between kidnappers and captured, particularly when the siege goes on for a longer time. And it seems as if a we group, so to speak, is forming that then turns against everybody who does not belong to that, namely the police, even the relatives of the victims. And it is this strange communion that seems to form in the face of extreme danger that engages our attention.
Outside OPEC headquarters, the police stood aside. The bus left for the airport where the DC-9 was waiting. The worldwide press condemned Chancellor Kreisky as being soft on terrorism. Had Kreisky refused to yield, how many hostages would Carlos have killed?
From the moment he started to deal with me, there had been already 3 killed people in the building. and a lot of destruction. More proof for his will to kill hadn't been necessary for me.
You can't...
The Iraqi go-between in negotiations was also convinced Carlos was capable of mass murder.
And as they described to me how they killed the people, they was laughing. They was very cool.
In Algeria, Carlos was persuaded to ransom the oil ministers of Iran and Saudi Arabia rather than kill them. The reported price, $1 million each. Carlos became a millionaire. This infuriated his terrorist friends, who saw him now as a mercenary with few ideals that couldn't be bought.
When he made up his mind not to kill them and to accept a compensation for that, he had troubles with his people.
This film, taken at Algiers airport, is the clearest record of Carlos that exists. That's him breaking away, answering a call from the plane. It was Christmas Eve, 1975, the last time Carlos was photographed. Since that day, international police sources, including Israeli intelligence, say that Carlos has not retired with his money. On the contrary, it is believed that he took an active role in planning the hijacking of the Air France airliner to Entebbe, Uganda, and that he escaped death again because he was in Libya directing operations when the Israeli commandos saved the hostages. Since the OPEC operation, Interpol, studying pictures and handwriting, has linked Carlos to years of terrorist crimes in Europe. They positively identify him as Ilich Ramirez Sanchez, son of a wealthy Venezuelan lawyer. How did Ilich become Carlos, the most wanted man in the world? It had been a fast and bloody rise in the underworld of international terrorism for Carlos. After OPEC, at age 26, he was the acknowledged ringmaster of terrorism in Europe. Who is Carlos, and how did he achieve his infamous reputation? Few sons have been fashioned by their fathers as completely as Carlos. He grew up as the pampered son of a devout communist. In business affairs, however, Dr. Jose Sanchez is a capitalist, having made millions in real estate. He is now retired to the small village of San Cristobal in the Andes. This rare film of Dr. Sanchez was taken over his protest. Later, despite his protest, the camera caught him again. Dr. Sanchez now describes his son as the general of world terrorism, and the father completely supports his son's methods. In 1966, Carlos moved to London and lived with his mother, who had now separated from the father. It was swinging London then, and on father's money, life was good. Shopping in Carnaby Street for flashy clothes. Carlos was fascinated by James Bond films and loved music of the Beatles. Seen here with his mother and a girlfriend, he became a popular young bachelor on the diplomatic cocktail circuit. He acquired a taste for the best Napoleon brandy and lost heavily in poker. Swinging London life stopped abruptly when father reasserted his influence. Carlos was sent to Patrice Lumumba University in Moscow. He studied terrorism for 2 years. Then, the playboy habits Carlos learned in London appeared to annoy his Russian hosts. He was expelled. From Moscow, the Carlos Trail leads to Palestinian training camps in Lebanon and Jordan. In camps like this one, Carlos was trained in the use of terrorist weapons. Sitting among his classmates from a dozen countries, it is here the alias Carlos Martinez was first used by Ilich Ramirez Sanchez. The name stuck, and the transformation from Ilich the student to Carlos the terrorist was completed. He went to work for the Palestinians. His first assignment, deliver machine guns and grenades to the fanatic Japanese Red Army, who had agreed to attack the passenger lounge at Lod Airport, Israel. The toll, 28 killed, 78 wounded. Police investigations begin to link Carlos with his terrorist crimes. He is identified as the mastermind behind a rocket attack on an Israeli jetliner at Orly Airport, Paris. The rockets missed. The terrorists escaped. All Europe reacted by surrounding airports with troops and tanks, not seen here since the Second World War. In London, as well as other European cities, Carlos juggled affairs with almost a dozen women. He prided himself as a great lover, and through his extraordinary appeal, used women to provide safe havens. In London, one such lover is Angela Atayola, a Spanish waitress. Here, Angela is escorted to jail by Scotland Yard agents. In her apartment under the bed, they found a suitcase. It contained a hit list of potential assassination victims, explosives, ammunition, and guns, one of which was used in the attempted assassination of British businessman Edward Seif. Carlos himself always miraculously managed to escape. Another girlfriend was Nydia Taban. She was arrested, jailed for a year, and deported to South America. Used and discarded, women are left behind, caught in the police dragnet for Carlos. An hour's flight away, in Paris, a favorite girlfriend was Nancy Sanchez, a Venezuelan student. Carlos told Nancy he was a businessman. He spent long hours on her telephone and often went on business trips. Why would some women find a murderer like Carlos appealing?
Well, I think that aside from probably being personally attractive, this kind of dangerous life has a kind of heroic attraction to a number of people. I understand movies and television shows are being made about such characters that probably use the same type of charismatic attraction that he also uses in his personal life.
A friend of Nancy Sanchez and Carlos was Angela Armstrong, a British secretary. Angela remembers constant parties at Nancy's apartment at 9 Rue Tuillier whenever Carlos returned from business trips. During one such party, French secret police closed in on Carlos. He killed 2 agents and a Palestinian terrorist friend whom Carlos suspected of betraying him. A massive police manhunt for Carlos is launched throughout France. Every transportation center is closely watched and guarded by police. Ironically, Carlos turns up the next day at the Paris Air Terminal after walking unnoticed through a cordon of police. In the terminal, he encounters Angela Armstrong.
He asked me, have you heard the news? I hadn't heard anything. And then he said, well, I've killed 2 men. The dirty Arab betrayed me. I kill all those who betray me. And he went off. I was not drunk. He seems quite sane. And I thought, my God, I'm going to be killed. I thought, I know him. So I knew that I definitely could identify, nobody else could. And I was scared.
Police later said Carlos escaped by coming here to the Algerian embassy in Paris. He was given a new passport and left France by boat for Algeria. Angela was arrested and questioned for 2 weeks. She was charged with collaborating with the enemies of France. Her case is still untried, and she is under constant police surveillance. She is paying the price of knowing Carlos. The high cost of combating terrorism is affecting us all. We pay for increased security at airports. And highly trained specialists like these to deal with terrorists like Carlos. In France, for example, the Groupe d'Intervention de la Gendarmerie train constantly for the day they might be called upon to combat Carlos or his terrorist friends. Anti-terrorist squads are on round-the-clock alert, not only in France, but in the United States, Britain, West Germany, and Israel as well. They are constantly spending money to develop new weapons and tactics. To a man, they believe it is not a question of whether Carlos will strike again, but when, where, and how.